In 2016, the Chinese Super League entered a new era. In the transfer market, they rivaled Europe's biggest clubs, signing some of the world's best players. But how good were these guys in earlier editions of Football Manager? Let's find out. 2004, we find Marek Hamsik with Brescia in Italy. He played 74 games at the club before he left for Napoli. 15 years later, and he's playing for Dalian Professional in China. As a club, Dalian were one of the most active in this era, signing players like Salomon Rondon, Nicolas Gaitan and Yannick Carrasco, as well as manager Rafael Benitez. Hamsik wouldn't stick around for long though. He left the club after 2 years to move to Sweden. Probably the most famous arrival in Asia, Oscar. Back in 2011, he's emerging with the Sao Paulo youth system. He'd only play 11 games at the club before moving to Internacional. Despite being one of the top players in the Premier League, he left Chelsea for Shanghai SIPG for around £60 million. Over the last 7 seasons, his form has remained, scoring 61 goals for the club and winning 2 league titles. Back in 2005, Jackson Martinez is with Independiente Medellin. Even during the earlier stages of his career, he was a formidable forward, scoring 52 goals for the club in 150 games. Considering what this guy was doing for Porto just a few years before he moved to the Super League, you can make a pretty compelling argument he was their most disappointing signing. After joining Guangzhou for around £40 million, he'd only make 16 senior appearances, scoring 4 goals. In 2018, he departed once again for Portugal. Although an Austrian, Marko Arnautovic's career actually began in the Netherlands. His real breakthrough came in the 2009 season, as he scored 14 goals for FC Twente. Another, who despite being in the best form of his career, would leave West Ham United and the Premier League for Shanghai for a fee of around £20 million. His output in China was actually quite impressive, scoring 20 goals in 39 games, before he returned to Serie A in 2021. A product of one of French football's finest academies, Cedric Bakambu. Over 4 years with Sochaux, he'd score 18 top-flight goals before Bursaspor picked him up for a bargain €1.8 million. After continuing to impress in Turkey and Villarreal, Beijing Guoan would activate his release clause at £40 million. In 87 matches in China, he'd score 58 goals and even helped the club win its most recent trophy, a Chinese FA Cup. One of the only big money signings who'd already played in Asia, Hulk. He spent 3 years in Japan, the best coming with Tokyo Verde as he hit 37 J-League 2 goals. 8 years later, he returned to the continent with Shanghai SIPG. He retained his impressive form, scoring 77 goals and winning a league title. In 2021, he transferred back to his homeland with Atletico Mineiro. Alex Teixeira began his footballing career in his homeland with Vasco da Gama. 16 goals in his first 2 seasons led Shakhtar to sign him. In 2016, Liverpool were keen on bringing the Brazilian to Anfield, but after a last-minute bid by Jiangsu Suning, he'd moved to Asia. All in all, he'd scored 72 goals with the club, winning a league title in 2020. He left for Besiktas 1 year later. Another who took a rather unconventional footballing journey, Paulinho. His career began in Brazil, but he'd spend time on loan in Lithuania and Poland, before eventually establishing himself with Corinthians. In 2015, Guangzhou Evergrande would acquire him from Tottenham for a bargain £9 million. He's arguably their most successful import of this era, winning 3 league titles and 4 other cup competitions. To another dominant Brazilian central midfielder, Ramires. In 2005, he's playing for Joinville FC. His form there led Cruzeiro to sign him for a bargain $300,000. Jiangsu Suning would have to pay a considerably larger fee to bring him from Chelsea. He made a decent start in China, scoring 11 league goals in his first 2 years. But over the final 2 seasons, he'd make just 1 appearance, before leaving for Palmeiras in 2019. Already 20 years old, in 2005 Carlos Tevez was with Corinthians. In 18 months with the club, he scored 45 goals, leading West Ham to sign him. A player who's dominated some of the world's best leagues, but his time in China was pretty forgettable. After signing a contract worth $41 million annually for Shanghai Shenhua, disaster would ensue. The coach would complain he was overweight and unfit to play, scoring just 4 goals in the Chinese Super League. Within a year, he'd returned to Boca Juniors. Quite a variety of players, all with differing levels of success. As Saudi Arabia is trying to pioneer its own football dominance, I'm sure some useful lessons should be learned from what happened with the Chinese Super League. Thank you for watching this video.